Thanks, Ross. And a big thank you to the Hobart Sangha for inviting me to participate in this great series of talks that's been set up this year. We began earlier with Susan giving a kind of overview of the entire Sutra service. And then Kirk, of course, followed up by taking up the great Prajna Paramita Heart Sutra, this thunderous sutra, actually, that almost opens up in a cavernous kind of way for all of us to fall into right at the beginning of the sutra service. And I sometimes feel like we forget how radical the Heart Sutra actually is. It pulls the rug out from any kind of introduced knowing that we might bring to it. Whatever we think might be the case turns out to be not the case. The Heart Sutra keeps saying, look deeper, look through, experience the world directly to find out how the heart actually beats. And so this radical upturning of all introduced knowledge is incredibly valuable. This Heart Sutra, which is cherished from Sangha to Sangha, from country to country, from generation to generation, from time beyond time to time beyond time. This Heart Sutra keeps beating and it keeps throwing us right into the heart of the Dharma. So how interesting that after such a radical upturning of what we think we know, we suddenly find ourselves in this very strange place, this Sho Sai Myo Kichijo Dharani. It's always struck me as almost slightly odd, this sutra, or this Dharani I should call it actually. It's odd to have something that doesn't really seem to make any sense, doesn't really seem to say anything that we can wrap our hands around or even wrap our mind around. But here it is, flowing on directly from this great Mahayana Sutra, the Heart Sutra. So what's going on with this Dharani? What is the import of all of these strange sounds and syllables that we all share, and that is, as we will discover, shared right across the world in so many settings, just like this one, where we're all gathered now? Well, it is true that the Dharani is not something that anybody understands. Isn't this wonderful? Actually, to have something that nobody finally can grasp or even decipher. Even the word Dharani is itself a little bit hard to handle. Sometimes it gets interchanged with mantra, Dharani, particularly in the Song dynasty. These two are used interchangeably. But what is a Dharani? Why is it here? Why does it actually take its place in our sutra service? Well, as I shared in the opening words in the email that I went around to everybody, the great, indomitable, actually, Zen scholar D.T. Suzuki actually said that the Dharani has no legitimate place in Zen. What a thing to say. This great scholar of Zen saying that this Dharani has no legitimate place here. You might think, if it has no legitimate place here, what on earth are we doing honouring it each time that we share this sutra service? But I want to look deeper into this, because we can ask, is there anything illegitimate in Zen? Is there anything that Zen actually finally excises from its practice? Aren't we all in our own wonderful ways somehow just innately illegitimate here on earth, just as we are completely legitimate? Perhaps this ultimately has nothing to do with legitimate or illegitimate. But let's take a closer look at what might be happening here in this sutra. Robert Aitken, as you may have in your sutra books, I hope you do, has given a tentative, or I'd even call courageous, kind of translation of this sutra. We hear it as no mo san manda moto na, etc., like this ongoing heartbeat following on from the Heart Sutra. But Robert Aitken gives it this pass. He says, perhaps the translation is something like this: veneration to all Buddhas, the incomparable Buddha power that banishes suffering. Om, the Buddha of reality, wisdom, nirvana, light, light, great light, with no categories, this mysterious power. I certainly feel like the Dharani has a kind of mysterious power. We don't understand it. We can't get to the bottom of it. As I say, Robert Aitken's translation itself is tentative. And it's tentative in part because even the original characters from which this Dharani has been carried across are very obscure. It's hard to even read what the characters are. They're so archaic, they're so old. So any attempt to translate this Dharani is going to be provisional at best. And if you really dig into it and strip away all the guesswork and just stay close to the slightly illegible characters that are there, you end up with something like this. Perhaps the closest we can get is something like speak, speak, hum, hum, blaze, blaze, up, up, burst, burst, shatter calamities, to the glorious one, hail. Now again, perhaps not something so much to understand but feel here. You can feel there's an energy to these words. There's a human energy to these words. So what is this energy? What is it that the sounds of this Dharani are perhaps holding? And again, in that email that I sent around, I spoke about the Sanskrit root to the word Dharani, which has dur in it, which means to hold or maintain. We have to ask ourselves, if we are holding and maintaining this Dharani, what is the Dharani itself holding and maintaining? I often think it's a little bit like a musical score whose notes are faint, or perhaps whose bar lines are faint. And we're listening in closely to what is it saying? What is the music of this Dharani actually setting forth? We might not have a clear answer or even idea of that, but we feel the music. We share the music when we chant it together. So you may know or may not know that this Dharani is practiced and shared right across the world. I touched on this. There are places like China, Korea, Vietnam, Tibet, other places as well, where if you just walked into the dojo and they were chanting the Sho Saimyo Kichijo Dharani, you'd feel right at home. There has been such little variation in the way this Dharani is held and maintained. You know, that root dur there again, held and maintained. There's something precious being held and maintained. What is it? What is it that has been held and maintained by these illegible and incomprehensible sounds and words? Well, in thinking about this, I was reminded of the way that Aboriginal song is held and maintained. I've been spending a lot of time actually recently with this wonderful book. I don't know if anybody's come across it, Yawulu. This is a priceless piece of research and treasured wisdom actually for our country, Yawulu. It's actually a collection of art and song of the Warlpiri people, the Warlpiri women's ceremonies. And they've given full permission for this ceremonial song and the way they're painted up and the way these designs relate to the song and the way these songs and designs relate to the dance. They've given permission for all of this to be recorded. Most of these recordings and the research that was done here was conducted in the 1980s. And it's curious that so many of these songs, which trace all the way back to the Jakarta, trace all the way back through time to beginningless time, beyond time, right into the timeless time of being here now. This living Jakirpa that Aboriginal people are so generous in wanting to share with us at every point. It's interesting that in these songs, there are many that, like the Sho Saimyo Kichijo Dharani, have illegible words or archaic words or words that can't be understood, or grammar even that is so old as to be obsolete. And none of this is a problem, say the Warlpiri women. In fact, the more archaic, the more strange, the more mysterious, in fact, the words are, the more valuable, the more cherished. It's as if they have the power to take us all the way back into words before words, into language before language. And in that way, perhaps they bring us closer to bird song and to creek song and to tree song or even rain song. They bring us closer to life before we made it up, before we started to overlay it with our ideas and dreams about how it should be or could be or might have been if only it was a little bit different. No. These archaic words actually give us a chance to return to the singing itself. And I would say that just like these Warlpiri songs, the Sho Saimyo Dharani brings us closer to a kind of profoundly human song. And I love this fact. I love the fact that the song itself is human-shaped. It sounds human. It feels human. And this feels like such a wonderful offering in the wake of the Heart Sutra, which is, of course, a great song of being human. But then we just come back to this almost humbler, perhaps a little bit more self-effacing, or certainly low-lit, grounded, perhaps a little bit dirty, perhaps a little bit soiled, and certainly a little bit anguished, a little bit pained. There's a note of pain in this Dharani, this Sho Saimyo Dharani. And why do I say that? Well, because the Dharani itself is not actually sent or directed towards the Buddha directly, even though that's the way that Robert Aitken translated it. It's actually directed to Lakshmi, which in Japanese is translated as Kichijo. There's the Kichijo and the Sho Saimyo Kichijo Dharani. Kichijo is a Hindu goddess. Kichijo is the goddess of light, wisdom and fortune. Hence all that light, burst, that kind of popping energy that raw translation offers. But in Japan, Kichijo developed further and became known as the goddess of fertility, of good fortune, of beauty, and of luck. And who doesn't want these things? Who doesn't want fertility and fortune and beauty and luck? Isn't this something that we not only wish for ourselves, but in our heart of hearts actually wish for each other, wish for all the many beings? When we gather together and say, we are here to save the many beings, we vow to save the many beings, we are actually also wishing them well. There's a kind of metta in all of this. We are wishing them to be fertile, to have great fortune, to recognize their own beauty, and to have great luck. I feel like there's something so relatable in all of this. It's not highfalutin. It's not aggrandizing. It's actually grounded. It's earthy. It's human. It's real. It wants to connect with some very relatable and believable human aspirations, or human desires too. Compulsive passions, you might even call them. So the Dharani is wishing us and all beings well. And it's also wishing for all beings to be safe. That's part of this well-wishing. May all beings be at ease. May all beings be well. The Dharani has this quality. May all beings be safe. And in that sense, it's actually interesting that one of the great occasions beyond the sutra service itself that this Dharani gets chanted is before work. Before heading off to work to engage in what we call samu, mindful, wholehearted work practice. It was traditional in monasteries and then also for lay practitioners in life to chant the entire Dharani as a way of actually saying, may all be well, may all be safe, may this work go well, may all beings participate, may all beings belong in this loving work that I am committing myself to on this day, in this moment. And I like that this is a fact, that the Sho Saimyo Kichijo Dharani is associated with work. Because this returns us to the great living fact of being a bodhisattva. We work in the world. We roll up our sleeves and get involved. We don't hold ourselves back. But we engage in our work in exactly the same spirit as we do on the cushion. We are engaging in the work of being in the world to accept all beings of the world, to allow anything that even feels remotely illegitimate to find its legitimate seat or to find its legitimate place right alongside us, no matter what we're doing. And it's also worth noting that work can be a kind of dangerous place, can't it? We all know this. It can be physically dangerous, but it can also be emotionally dangerous, psychologically dangerous. I'm not trying to amplify the sense of danger here, but anywhere that we work is a site of great difficulty, great challenge. We know that work is a site of great difficulty and challenge. It's part of the reason that it's so rewarding to go to work, so rewarding to be daring and courageous enough to engage wholeheartedly with other people. But it's worth acknowledging that it can be scary, it can be hard going, and it can hurt. I think there's a dimension of this Dharani that actually admits to the fact that life hurts. Life can hurt. So part of our work here is taking care of each other, taking care of the way, taking care even of this Dharani, even though we don't understand it. We don't finally understand it, just like we don't finally understand another person or another being. We're not in the realm of needing to understand, to finally almost control or oversee another being. We're simply here to take care. Taking care of the Dharani is taking care of all the many beings. No wonder it has been so cherished over so many thousands of years. But it's interesting that not all Zen teachers agree with me. There are plenty of Zen teachers who think this is actually just a load of nonsense. This Dharani actually has no place in the sutra service. I don't think D.T. Suzuki goes quite that far. He's acknowledging the fact that it's odd to have something like this turn up. It turned up in the Song dynasty when practitioners and teachers actually felt that the sutra service itself, which is our kind of great sutra work, our chanting work, needed to be protected. That's why they invited Lakshmi, or Kichijo as we call her. That's why they invited her in, to look after the sutra service, to look after all of us sitting here. But as I say, not everybody agrees. And here are just a couple of quotes from teachers. I just went and had a little search online, knowing that I'd find a few people who were sick and tired of this Dharani. Well, here's one of these teachers. He says, "I will not chant magic spells. If the Dharani looks like meaningless gobbledygook, that's because it is meaningless gobbledygook, with no traceable meaning in Indian languages. The purpose is as the name implies, to prevent disaster. Well, good luck with that, he said. Another one says, I do not feel that we need such magic in modern times, when the whole world is already magic if you just open your eyes. True enough. True enough. But I would suggest that there's something wonderfully human about needing or wanting a ceremony or an occasion to be reminded of this magic. We can think that the magic is going to reveal itself all of a sudden without any kind of commitment. But isn't Zazen itself a kind of ceremony of commitment to the very magic? Isn't it the commitment to Zazen and the commitment to turning up every week with Sangha and sitting every day at home? Isn't this very ceremony what actually allows us to open our eyes? It's almost as if when we commit to the ceremony in such a way, our eyes open of themselves. They just slowly open naturally, in time, and wider and wider and wider, I would add. And I feel like the Sho Saimyo Kichijo Dharani is yet another ceremony of this kind. Whether you do it in the sutra service or whether you do it before work, it's another body mandala, another site of practice. And again, returning to those Walpuri women who have so much wisdom to share, they actually say that without the ceremonies, the country would not exist. You can hear their commitment to the ceremonies that allow them to keep their eyes open, to keep the creek song and river song and tree song and sky song and twig song and stone song, to keep all of that bright, 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 open, open, up, up, clear, clear. They're practicing something not very different to what we do when we practice this Sho Saimyo Kichijo Dharani. You might even say that without the ceremonies, we can default to a kind of knowing once more. The ceremony itself interrupts our habitual flow of knowing. And this is a wonderful fact. I actually love that when we agree to just turn up to a sutra service or turn up to a sit or sit anyway in the evening, we're actually interrupting that habitual flow of knowing, that overlay that we get used to imposing over everything. And it's a tiresome overlay. It's predictable in so many ways. We create it because we want it to be predictable. But it's actually that predictable quality that robs us of the surprise of being, the surprise of country, the surprise of being alive. Being alive is a great surprise. None of us could have anticipated this. This is actually very strange. A great revelation, you might say, just to be sitting here as we are with each other. So this access that the ceremony gives us to surprise, to the brightness of each particular being, to not knowing, you might say, actually draws us closer to what it is perhaps that the Dharani is holding and maintaining. What is it that the Dharani is holding and maintaining? Well, I might suggest to you that the Dharani is holding and maintaining silence. It's holding and maintaining, fortunately, nothing at all. It's holding and maintaining emptiness. The emptiness with which we can truly wake up to and discover our true nature, which is empty and yet brimming as it is right now, empty of abiding form, empty of final knowing, empty of being caught at any kind of concept at all. And this is held in the silence that we honor in Zazen, but also the silence that is spoken about in the Shodoka, another presence in our sutra books. Because in the Shodoka it says, it speaks in silence. In speech, you hear its silence. Now the Dharani speaks in silence. It won't disclose its meaning. It actually stays as close to silence as it possibly can. And in speech, you hear its silence. When we chant it, when we disclose it as sound, it lets you hear the silence of sound. This is something that we are forever allowing ourselves to experience in Zazen. To hear the silence even of sound itself. The no thing within thing. The emptiness of form. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form, says the Heart Sutra. And here it is, turning up in an embodied way in this Dharani. Form is emptiness. The form of this Dharani dissolves into unintelligibility. But emptiness is form. We can hear it as no, mo, san, manda, moto, nan. There it is again. It speaks in silence. In speech you hear its silence. And so if we feel into it this way, if we experience it this way, you might say that Dharani is actually singing up something like this. Perhaps this is the Dharani's song, or the import of its song. It's saying if you let go into these sounds, you let go into silence. When you just chant the sounds, when you just become the sounds, you just become the silence. And if you let go completely into the silence at the heart of these sounds, you'll find yourself coming up in every single sound that there is, every single detail of the world that there is. And then perhaps it's also adding to that, that the greatest calamity, if we're here celebrating this Dharani to avert calamity, perhaps the greatest calamity is not to be intimate with this silence, and therefore not intimate with form, not intimate with all of these details. So it's saying, listen to my tune. Listen to my tune, and you will find yourself in tune. You will find yourself as the old clear melody itself of the Tao, of the way, realizing your Buddha nature. And I feel like this has an extra kind of thrust in our time right now, because we're all aware of just how calamitous the world feels right now. If there was ever a time where we were looking around and saying, I wish I could avert calamity, or I wish calamity would not impose itself so violently and so deeply into the lives of so many other innocent people, well, then it's now. We all feel this. It's impossible not to turn on the news or open a paper or even speak with a friend or overhear a conversation in the shop without feeling the pain that people are feeling for others and feeling themselves. There's been so much change. There is so much fear and anxiety about the way things are going. There's so much uncertainty. It feels good to be able to invite somebody like Kichijo close, to say, be with me through all of this. Stay close to me through all of this. I need you. I need you. I need this practice. I need your entree into the silence that I trust is at the heart of all things. This silence is the great refuge of our practice, not a place to run away to, but a place to realize so that we can move with a kind of sanity and clarity in a calamitous world. So another way of looking at this is Kichijo, if she comes close, is actually giving us a sense of luck. It's not a word you hear very often in Zen, luck. But actually, we are lucky to be here. If the Dharani itself is wishing us luck, wishing all people luck, saying, have a lucky life, be fortunate in this life, be at ease in this life, find your sure footing in this life. I hope you do. I hope you do. I hope you find luck in this kind of way. If it's saying all of this, it's also underscoring the fact that we are already this luck. How unlikely it is to be here. How illegitimate all of us are to be here. It's so lucky that we are. It's so incomprehensible that we are. So to begin to actually appreciate how lucky we are, this shifts the focus from searching for some kind of luck in the future to recognizing and having gratitude for just how we are, just how this is. So I do hear a great note, almost a bass note of gratitude in this Dharani. It's saying, good luck, isn't it? Good luck to be here, isn't it? Now let's share this luck. Let's actually share the good. And I want to finish this talk actually by sharing a wonderful poem by W.S. Merwin, which he actually directs to luck. He addresses it to luck. It might be addressing it to Kichijo or Lakshmi. It might be addressing it to the Dharani itself. Perhaps it's even addressing itself to our own hearts, this lucky heart that we all happen to share. So here's W.S. Merwin, wonderful man, poet, exemplar of the way. And this is what he says to luck, and I'll finish with this. He says, in the cards and at the bend in the road, we never saw you. In the womb and in the crossfire, in the numbers, whatever you had your hand in, which was everything, we were told never to put our faith in you. To bow to you humbly after all, because in the end there was nothing else we could do but not to believe in you. Still, we might coax you with pebbles kept warm in the hand, or coins, or the relics of vanished animals, observances, rituals, not binding upon you, who make no promises. We might do such things only not to neglect you and risk your disfavour. O you, who are never the same, who are secret as the day when it comes, you whom we explain as often as we can, without understanding. So thank you for your trouble.